Welcome to the VMJPod Graduate Recruitment Series, where we dive into the latest trends and innovations in early career hiring, featuring insights from industry top experts driving the future of talent acquisition.
Welcome to the VMJ Pod. I'm here with
Steve.
And I'm David, and we are unpacking the grad space. And we've had some terrific guests, and I'm very excited to have Kelly with us. Kelly, welcome to the VMJ Pod, where we're unpacking grad recruitment. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thank you. And thanks for having me. So, yes, my name's Kelly. I currently work at Suncorp. So Suncorp is an insurance company across Australia and New Zealand. I manage the grad program here, and we hire approximately 60 graduates a year, but it's a 2-year program. So we have anywhere up to 140 grads at a time. And then we hire about 40 interns in the summer as well. So that's sort of our recruitment numbers. And then from an applications perspective, last year we received 10,000 applications, which was pretty much a 30% jump for us from the year before. We had a big jump. Yeah, massive jump. So we're expecting similar this year. We've already got over 5,000 in our expression of interest already. So, and because we don't open applications until August, that's our usual time of year. So the numbers are definitely up there. But my role particularly looks after the strategy of the recruitment, but I also look after the program management as well. So I have one of those roles where I go across the full spectrum of the program management. And I have one partner in crime. So Izzy is in my team. She's based in Sydney. I'm based in Brisbane. We do that together, but we have an RPO model. So we work closely with our recruitment partner when it comes to the high volume recruitment steps that we do as part of the process. So we work very closely with them. So that's sort of how we make it work here.
That's how you roll. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so does the RPO team that you've got,
Mm-hmm.
they manage, I guess, that glut of applications, the recruitment process. How have you found, knowing the depth of experience that you've got in the industry, Kelly, what have you done, I guess, initially with that RPO team to ensure that they're kind of meeting your expectations as the program manager?
Yeah, so the way we've set it up is that we'll always have a project manager on their side. So there'll be one point of contact who's responsible for everything on their side, and we will work closely with them. So even though applications open in August, we've already started our monthly meetings as part of that preparation. So we're building that rapport. I also ask that person when they have capacity to come along to some of our grad events as well, so that they can familiarize themselves with what we're trying to achieve with the program. So it's about that constant communication and engagement with the team. And then once we actually get into the more volume part of the recruitment, we will, and they start to lift up the number of resources that they have supporting in the background. We will have weekly check-ins, basically, to help answer any questions that they have, but also to make sure that it's keeping on track and in line with what we're trying to achieve with Suncorp.
Yeah, and it really it tails really nicely into one of the first questions that Dave and I had really wanted to get out of this. And look, full transparency, it is a little hard to disconnect Kelly Pfeffer, Suncorp with everything else that I know and the industry knows about you from outside of this. But it not only with the context of that RPO piece, but then also when you've engaged with other practitioners in the industry and your own teams throughout the journey. What kind of behaviors or competencies have you seen within those individuals that has made them a success in that early career space? And clearly now what you're trying to do with the RPO model.
Yeah, look, I think if something stands out to me, it would be, I think, uh, the willingness to take some risks. I think the early careers industry is very good at trialing new things, giving new technology a go. If anything, I think, well, particularly in my experience, my team often has sort of set the scene for the rest of the recruitment team, because we will jump in and just give things a go, without fear of failure. And then the rest of the recruitment team comes in and goes, "Oh, how did you do that? Or what did you use? Or how come you're able to find all these great people?" And I think that's where people who particularly find themselves in early careers seem to have that sort of trait, in that they're on the continuous improvement um, pathway, I think, and willing to give things a go, and have a go without worrying about what the outcome is.
I'll declare I'm pretty new to the grad recruitment space. I really am. It's probably been the last 18 months. I've been more traditional talent acquisition, large scale, lots of open roles. I would have thought, from what I have learnt, a lot of applications through. You
Hmm.
just shared that,
Hmm.
and the fast paced nature that comes with that, and I'm assuming that takes a certain person to be able to keep up with the
Mm.
pace. Do you mind if you
Yep.
just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think, pace is definitely the right word. Pace with volume, definitely. I think you've obviously there's got to be attention to detail. So you've got to make sure you're keeping on top of everything. I think candidate experience is very much something that needs to be front of mind as well. Like, I think when you're got that volume, it's very hard to keep the same level of candidate experience going at the same time with the quality process that you're trying to run. So I think underlying that is a genuine care for the other person on the other side, and what they're experiencing as part of your process, and how you're giving them feedback and keeping them up to date. So I think it's got to be someone who has a genuine care for how they're treating others, with that attention to detail, with that desire to constantly chase perfection. I think that's another trait, in that we're all every year trying to do better than what we did the year before. So those would be the main ones that would come to mind. Yeah.
Probably should have started writing a list
Well, there
and almost
probably
like
will
create
be.
the quintessential position description, or
What?
skills and competencies
Yeah,
of
attributes.
great recruiters, great program managers, right? You're definitely
Yeah.
correct in that the programmatic nature of grad recruitment allows for a sense of what worked, what didn't, how do we iterate, how do we improve, how do we make things better. But
Yeah.
in addition to that, there's that furious competition that sits in the industry as well. And this would be a really interesting one to unpack as well, Kel. We're an incredibly competitive industry, but as soon as you step out of that competition space, it is easily the most, you know, connected, empathetic, everyone helping everybody else out, even if it is,
Is it
a
because
potential.
you're all bearing the same scars?
Well, it could be
Mhm.
right, but like what do you think's driven that within the industry, that we all then get together and put our shoulder to the wheel and go, hey, I've learnt this, let me share it
Mm.
with you, or I've had that problem, how can I help? When we work for completely different businesses, like I've never seen that anywhere else.
Yeah, I think maybe it's too because of the type of people we attract to our space too, Steve, right? So, and I think it goes back to that previous comment around genuine care for others, and that desire to care about the other person that you're working with. And I think that goes through to um, how we also interact with each other. Also, I think the other element to that is that often we are only the one person within our organizations, or or a small team of people within our organizations who do what we do. So often we don't get the internal network that we crave. So when we find people in other organizations who actually get it, know what we're going through, know the challenges, but also know the awesome feeling you get when you get it right. I think you sort of find that connection through what you do, as opposed to who you work for. And I think a lot of us only know what we know because someone shared it with us one day. And so in a way, you want to give that back as well.
Yeah.
I get there's a real sense of achievement,
Hmm.
giving someone their first job in
Hmm.
the space. And can you talk to a little bit about that, and the
Hmm.
feeling that a grad recruiter could have or does have when they when they offer that position, and if that
Mm,
how that make the meaningfulness behind the role in that capacity.
yeah. Look, I think we get all spectrums of responses when we make those calls. I think I wouldn't always assume that the grads are going to be. We don't always get the super excited responses. I think years ago we did, but these days I think sometimes it can be a mixed bag. But certainly when you get the ones where they're really excited and they just can't, they actually doubted their own ability to get through the process and weren't sure what the future was holding for them. They didn't know what they were going to get when they finished university. I think when you get those genuine people who are just so excited about that, knowing that their next step is secure, I think they're the best phone calls for sure. Absolutely. And then, the beauty of my role is I also then get to onboard them and spend time with them once they're actually in the program as well. And I think that just adds another level of connectedness to them as well. So, you have these grads where you might run into them on campus and provide them a bit of advice, and then you see them through the recruitment process and all the way to 12 months later when they're, rolling off the program and getting promoted. I still have grads over the years that I still remember those moments, like those moments where, yep, this is why we do what we do.
And is there a sense of celebration
Hmm.
for internally
Oh,
as a grad
I
team that you've been able to give this person the opportunity and they've accepted and
David, big pat on my back. Hello,
of course,
it's amazing, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
It's amazing. Like it is absolutely, and I think it's what keeps you coming back for more every year. Is that's the reward in what you do is these people being successful.
yeah. So we spoke about the highs. We spoke
Mm.
about a few things, but what are a few of the lows for anyone who is considering? Because there's some terrific recruiters that are out there, and they probably don't know much about the grad recruitment
Mm.
space being its own ecosystem within itself. Let's
Mm.
keep it real. What are a few things that are quite daunting?
Oh, I think you can easily get very overwhelmed with volume. I think, particularly when you do care about the service that you're providing or the experience that you're wanting to give candidates, it's very hard to get that balance right around what not to take personally as well. So grads are pretty good at giving feedback too, which is amazing. And sometimes it's justified, and sometimes you just think that was a little bit too personal or unjustified. So I think those moments can certainly get you. I think one of the challenges I probably find with most new people to the industry is often they are inheriting a process that already existed that someone else ran. And I think it's actually way harder to just pick up something that someone else designed and try to run with it yourself than actually when you design your own process to, fit for purpose. So I think people usually in their first year just keep the status quo, and that's when they struggle a little bit because they haven't like it hasn't molded to who they are and what they want to achieve from that process. So they'll often maybe that's where they'll probably find some challenges. It gets a bit hard. They don't know how, what time frames things need to be done by, how the systems work, and how to actually get the best efficiencies out of the systems that they've got, all of those sorts of things. So, yeah, that I think for new people, that's often a challenge for them to sort of get through that first campaign. And then if we can get them to stay for a second campaign, they usually enjoy it a lot better.
Yeah,
Mm.
you're definitely off to the races after your first one. And again, it feeds back to that piece that we were talking about before, Kelly, about that notion of continually improving, iterating
Mm,
your process, finding the bits that didn't work. Because any new practitioner that's coming into a pre-existing process looks at it from a different perspective. They have a
mm,
new lens. They bring their own insights to
mm,
bear. So, and it is the really hard bit with the industry is that it can be in that first 1 to 2 years desperately transient. And
mm,
which I guess Cal leads into probably the next question that I was going to put your way is that we've probably seen over the last 5 to 10 years this almost this change in mentality at a business level, and this isn't a universal
mm,
constant, right? But I'm hearing more and more now that organizations see early careers recruitment and development as almost more of a strategic input into its business rather than what it used to
Mhm.
be, a decade or so ago, which was bums on seats,
Yep.
right?
Mhm.
I need bodies, I need a workforce. Early careers is the cheapest place to get that. That's your job,
Is that a
right?
sign of the
Yep.
market though?
Yeah, I mean, look, it would be good to get Cal's perspective on that, but there's definitely been a shift, and whether you've got any commentary or advice on, where
Yeah.
you're seeing that trend.
Yeah, I think, and look, what's hard to get your head around sometimes is when you're going out to the business to get requirements, you're also educating them about the fact that you're not, I don't want you to tell me what you need now. I want you to tell me what you need in 3-4 years' time, because by the time we recruit, get the grads through the program, they're the people that you want, not the grads who are starting next January. So um, we are only really, even from a Suncorp perspective, we're fairly new in our strategic workforce planning journey. We acquired some technology last year that's helping us to do that a lot better. So, to be honest, this is probably the first year where it's really been built into the business order process more consistently. And we are trying to have the business think about some of those critical capability areas to hire grads into, as opposed to just picking up what you hired last year and going with it again this year, which I think is, I think something that a lot of organizations sort of fall into is they don't know what they need. So they just say, well, we'll go with what we did last year because that worked. So I think that's a pretty normal way that most organizations go, but I feel like there is a lot more conversation around how early careers can support strategic workforce planning, because it's not the only strategy, right? It's just one of the strategies. But if we can better align the programs to that, hopefully we will also have better employment outcomes for the graduates after they come off the grad programs as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Mm.
and leading into that organizational strategic intent then becomes, the next skill set that I think a
Mhm.
lot of early careers professionals need to start leaning into, right? Because and again, the demographic and that transient nature of the industry over the last 10,
Mm.
15, 20 years has been, grad is the stepping stone to become an HR business partner or a talent acquisition
Yeah.
business partner. It's not a career. But I think now that we're seeing that,
Yeah.
that shift, and David, it could absolutely be right. There could be a lot of market driven changes, especially post COVID, where we couldn't import talent anymore. A lot of organizations had to grow talent locally or had to grow talent locally but overseas. Like where we now need to ramp up, whether we're starting to offshore more work, and a grad program now needs to evolve to bring in talent from Asia or from Europe as well to support the Asia Pacific business more broadly.
So I'm
Mm.
hearing flexibility, and I'm also hearing influence as well, educating
Mhm.
the hiring managers who all have different needs to be able to. Can you unpack that and the
Yeah.
importance of a grad recruiter to influence
Yeah.
conversation with hiring managers or others? I don't know.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we do spend a lot of time bringing to their attention in graduate recruitment is that we are hiring for potential. So it's other than recruitment that they are not used to doing.
Mm.
They might have a job brief. They'll look at someone's CV to see if they've got that particular experience, and it's easier for the hiring leader to you know choose candidates based on what they're looking for from a skills expertise perspective. When we're talking about grads, we don't know what role they're going to go into yet. Most of the time, that generally speaking, we know where they're going, but not always. Sometimes we're needing someone who's able to go across the business. So we're really asking the leaders to look for people who are uh, like an organizational fit, an industry fit, who have some core capabilities that we know anyone in our organization should either have or have an aptitude to learn. and then being able to so it's a bit more vague, the recruitment for early careers as opposed to specialist recruitment. And I think that's what hiring leaders generally struggle with the most. Like the first thing hiring leaders want to see is their CV, or they want to put them through some sort of practical work test, or things like that, because they only know experience. They don't really know someone's ability to be experienced in that role. And I think that's the hardest bit. So we do have to spend a bit extra time with our leaders. We do briefings with them beforehand. We explain the differences. We also get our learning partner who spends a lot of time with our grads once they're on the program to also brief our hiring leaders to talk about what are some of the challenges the grads are facing, where are some of their skills gaps, things like that, so that then we're providing, so the cohort we've got now is helping to inform the cohort that we recruit for next year. So it's that, again, goes back to that continuous improvement piece.
Yeah, and there's a lot of thought leadership in the experienced specialist recruitment space around this evolving practice of skills based recruitment or skills based hiring,
Mhm.
or we're not
Yeah.
just looking at you as your background, your experience. We're looking at what you could bring, what this future focus is. It's actually really interesting to then kind of sit back as an early career professional and go, well, that's everything that we do.
Mm.
We don't have the luxury of being able to recruit for, you worked on this project, you've delivered stuff on this technology platform, or you've interacted with these kind of customers before. We are almost at its purest sense recruiting for skills, competencies, future potential. So, there's a really interesting link then to the journey that a lot of other organizations are potentially starting to go through with their own experienced recruitment. Maybe there's some really interesting lessons that they could learn from the early career space.
This episode is brought to you by Video My Job, your go-to platform for creating branded employee videos at scale with zero editing. Authentic employee stories are the key to showcasing your culture and attracting top talent. Book a demo on our website and learn how to create hundreds of videos in under 60 days with full support from start to finish.
As a recruiter, you're in touch with universities and you're
Mhm.
across what they're teaching those students as
Yep.
they emerge to start applying for those positions. Are you sharing that information with the hiring managers of what is possible to recruit, or are you just relying on them telling you what they need in 2 years, 3 years time, 4 years time? And
So yeah,
I'll share.
yeah.
I'll give you a bit of context. Like I'm not sure what how a hiring manager thinks of how AI could really help plug in and create efficiencies. But I'm assuming, and I'm only assuming that they're well forward at the university level because of the efficiencies that it does create, and they're more able to tinker with technology, being a younger person. Um,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
There are a few assumptions in that, I suppose. But
Yeah.
I mean, Are you leading the conversation and influencing how they should be recruiting in 2 or 3 years, or or is a grad recruiter an order taker, just going, well, what are you looking for?
Yeah, and I think that goes back to also the confidence and the ability of the recruiter. So I'm certainly not. Well, I will put myself in the category of not just an order taker. I'm certainly an will try to influence as much as possible. And so I actually do a whole big pack with a whole heap of data, and how the program's progressed to date, where it's successful, where we're still trying to improve things. I'll give them a bunch of retention data and things like that, so that we can help them make an informed decision around the hiring. Um, at the end of the day, I don't hold the FTE or budget for these roles, so I mean that's always the challenge. But I will influence as much as I can, and then I'll have meetings with those parts of the business to actually talk them through the information, why I am recommending what I am recommending, and how we can help support them to get to where they need to be. So it might be iteratively. It might not be the next year that we get it perfect. It might be over 3 years we're working towards this,
Hmm.
and just get them on board that way. So. Mm.
I guess as someone that's got that real depth of experience in the early career space, Kelly, what are you seeing as some of the real emerging trends? Not, I guess, not just from an organizational perspective, but also the trends that we're seeing coming out of the talent pools from university these days?
Oh, that's a very big question, Steve.
That was actually the question I was trying to ask. You just articulated so much better.
I mean, in relation to the students themselves, I will also say I personally have noticed it. I feel like we've seen the end of the challenges that came from the end of COVID. And I don't know if you're the same, Steve, with your grads and candidates, but I certainly feel like our cohort that we've got this year that we recruited last year is very different to like our 2022 cohort, for example, in many ways, but not only in skills, but also in their own personal motivators and what they want to achieve from their careers and things like that. And they're less reliant on the business to provide everything and more willing to take ownership for their own learning and career and development. So and that I have no data to back that up. That's just that's a gut feel statement, that one. So and I think having just spent a whole week with them all, they've certainly impressed me this week. So I think the students coming out are showing a great level of maturity. I think where we're probably still struggling is their engagement in the support that they can receive while they are at university is still very out of balance, I think. And that's not a reflection of the university. I think just trying to engage these students in those support services is really challenging, which means then when we as employers are then engaging with those students, it's like they are doing recruitment for the first time. And some of them you feel like if you'd only just got some help at uni, maybe you might have, you might not have to apply for so many times. Maybe you might have got it right a little while ago.
Yeah.
So um, I think technology is an interesting thing. I think even when I think back 15 years ago, um, hardly anyone was using technology in their recruitment process. It was very manual. It was very question driven, CV driven, whereas I think these days we're much more embracing the opportunities that are out there to streamline, to make the process not only simpler for ourselves, but better for the candidates as well. So I think we're getting a lot more information out of our process because of technology as well. So, a lot of the products are giving us so much more insights into candidates now that we've never had before. And in some ways, it's almost making our decisions harder sometimes because we do have so much information. So sometimes it's actually really hard to differentiate between a bunch of candidates sometimes because they're all so great. So, um, yeah, I mean, trends. I don't think there's anything recently that I've come across. We're all talking about AI. We're all talking about technology. We're talking about strategic workforce planning and how we can enable that. I think the next thing, and we sort of started talking about it in the last 12 months, but the leaders who are then supervising and managing the graduates once they're in the business, I think we're going to need to invest a lot more support into them moving forward, just because we have got these different people coming through our businesses now with different expectations around what their experience in the business is. And I think the leaders are going to have to catch up a little bit.
A-
Yeah.
And is that a grad recruitment skill set that is required, or is that more of a business culture?
I think it goes back to my previous comment in that I think a lot of the hiring leaders are so used to doing recruitment, how they know how to do recruitment, and then we're putting them in a room with a bunch of candidates who are asking lots of different questions and have different expectations around what they're going to get once they're in the business and what am I going to do on a day-to-day basis, and leaders sometimes don't necessarily know how to respond to a lot of that sometimes. So I think it's yeah, and trying to eliminate biases and all of those sorts of things that come out every now and then as well. But yeah, we're trying to, it's still the same thing. Oh, this person doesn't have experience in XYZ. And so, well, of course they don't, because they haven't worked in the industry yet. So it's just little things like that. Being able to question the hiring leaders in the moment around why they think the way they think, why they've assessed the person the way they have, and why they like the candidate or don't like the candidate, so that we can question them and bring them
Yeah.
around to making the right decision in the end.
Yeah. So that real need to still, even though we've got, evolving technology and processes and all that kind of stuff, there's still the need to be in the room as the subject matter expert to influence, to make
Yeah.
sure that they are making a decision that is informed, that can be quantified, but then also takes in that broader business context at the same
Yeah.
time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think the other challenge for leaders as well is that they are time poor too. But I think once they're realizing as well that once the grads are actually in the business, the leaders are spending time on things that they didn't actually expect that they would need to spend time on. And I think that's the other part of it as well, is the grads are coming out of university, like they're really smart and they're really capable, but there's so many simple things that we assume that they know how to do or have brought with them that then they don't. And that then the leaders sort of struggle a little bit, realizing that they actually have to invest a little bit of time in these people to help bring them up to speed quickly. So,
Is there a playbook that exists? Is there a learning and development opportunity to for hiring managers to really get a lot of their queries
yeah.
answered, or
That's
that just
that's a
doesn't
really
exist?
great question. That's a really great question, because I mean, I've been doing this for a while, and I even think every cohort I get is so
It's different.
different.
Okay.
It's you write the playbook one year and you'll have to
Yeah.
rewrite it the next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
What?
We
What?
definitely saw that. For the ones that were here pre-COVID, in
Mm,
COVID, post-COVID, even the talent landscape, but also, the caliber, the resilience, you know the pizzazz that the grads had through that period is wildly different, right? And you do wonder
mm,
whether, as universities had to then pivot to a more remote, or now a more hybrid style of learning, and grads and whatnot, they can work and earn and learn at the same time, but they are missing some of that social cohesion. I know that had been one of the
mm,
really big topics during COVID, was they lost their human interconnectivity skills. That just to
mm,
be a good human in a workplace, was really foreign to them, because they'd had to be remote for
mm.
such a long time.
So now they're more balanced, all-rounded humans. They haven't gone through that. And what you're saying is they've got more questions for hiring managers, and hiring managers don't know how to answer that.
Yeah,
Is that what you?
plus, this is the big generational change, right? We are now starting to see not necessarily the age demographic, but even the experience demographic within organizations really start to fundamentally shift. Whether they are bulking out their early career space locally, or they're bulking out their early career space internationally, we haven't seen for probably since the downturn at the very start of COVID. Companies have ramped, like they've noticed they need big chunks of early career talent, but now that generational shift is starting to come through, where the grads from 2021 are starting to get into more experienced roles. They're going to start becoming hiring managers soon, and the current cohort of hiring managers will start to move off. So that playbook piece is fundamentally going to change again, because now we've got a different cohort, a different environment
I feel
starting to work towards.
there's a level of fear of missing out if you are not at that stage within your grad cycle. So for those who are just starting out, they're probably on a different journey, aren't they? For a company that that aren't used to taking on so many
mm,
graduates. So an organization's maturity as they go through the cycle multiple times, or maybe it's being ramped up over time, is very different to someone who's just starting their journey out.
Yeah.
mm. Yeah. And and that probably leads on to another point, in that I think sometimes the practitioners in our space from an organizational perspective, because this also happens as well, is it can take you 2 or 3 campaigns to actually build momentum in the market as well.
Mm.
So you can't just, as an organization, all of a sudden decide you need to hire graduates and think you're going to be successful straight up. It can take a couple of years for your brand awareness, for students to build trust in the future that they will have at your organization. And equally, when an organization hires grads consistently and then all of a sudden doesn't for a year,
Mm.
um, they don't always recognize that it's going to take them another 2 or 3 years again to get back to where
Yeah.
they were. So we do, and this is with that transient thing, is often it's organizations who are really successful go, oh, well, we don't need to do this anymore, so we'll just pause for a year.
Okay.
But then the consequences is that students take notice of this and don't apply for them when they do come back on, because they don't trust that that is going to be a secure option for them.
So you got to keep the
So
flame burning.
Yeah.
you got to keep the flame burning, David. Yes.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I say to my organization all the time. I don't care if you can't increase your numbers.
Yeah.
It's okay if you want to decrease your numbers, but we have to do it in some shape or form. We
Mm.
can't not recruit at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got you.
And, interestingly, because, and Kelly, I'm not sure if you're seeing this with the stuff at Suncorp, but students are engaging with the notion of career opportunities earlier and earlier in their course.
Why is that?
Well, I mean, look, I think in part because now they're starting to see university is the stepping stone to a career. Like we're seeing more first year students than I can recall going to career expos, going into student societies. Really starting to engage and ask the question around, hey, is there an opportunity for me, even in my first year of studies, to come and work for you? And, I think that I hadn't really seen that as much pre-COVID or even during COVID, but I think now, and it's not a universal truth either. I think, to Kelly's point before, there are definitely students at university that need help, but that don't go and seek it out.
Yeah.
Right. So you almost get this like quasi forgotten subset of what's going on at university. But those that are engaged are out there within the first 6 months of starting their course, right? Because a lot of grad recruitment is, most of the expos are March, April, and then there's another subset, for organizations like Kelly's that are going out mid-year. So if your brand isn't in the market, the first years will notice it. And if you're missing 2 years, they're starting to now apply for internships with other firms, your competitors, different industries. You miss the cycle.
It's great that you've just shared the change that you've identified. So for a recruiter who is considering the grad space, being resilient, seeking the opportunities, I see that as an opportunity.
Yeah.
To amplify your brand earlier, to get in front of the race, and it's identifying that as an opportunity. So it sort of leads me in. Oh, I could talk to you all day, Kelly. I mean, there's just so much to unpack, but and there's a lot of takeaways from this episode on what for people who are considering being a grad recruiter, or even wanting to level up in certain areas. In your opinion, what do you think the future state for a grad recruiter is?
I think for the future, and I think it is sort of similar to my role now, is that I think we will be able to design and build the process, but we might not necessarily be on the tools. So perhaps technology will do a lot more for us automatically. So we there might be some parts that we're used to doing now that we won't need to do in the future, and that's fine. I think it just allows us time to build the best process that we can using the tools that make the most sense for us in what we are trying to achieve, but also then allowing us to get more engaged in the process where there is high value to get engaged in. So, those conversations Yeah. So conversations, it's helping the leaders make the right hiring choices. It's making sure that we can secure the candidates and keep them secure so that they start with us. So
Yeah.
I think it's just changing the type of work we do as opposed to if you're currently doing phone screening or watching videos or whatever, you might not do that in the future. You might actually do it differently.
Okay, I
Mm,
was going to ask, where are you going to get your time from because of the volume of applications? I would have thought
mm,
it's so much easier today to apply for a position than what it was, say, 10
yeah.
years ago. So grads would
Yes.
be spamming. But through the emergence of technology, there's an opportunity there to fold time and fold
Yeah.
time through designing a new method of or
Yeah.
new approaches. If someone did have an opportunity to take a step back, what do you think what do you th- what do you think where do you think the biggest opportunity is for them to design something new if they were to jump into something to create the biggest efficiency for themselves in the future?
So I think first step would be to maybe come to it with a blank canvas, because I think sometimes even when we're trying to design a new process, we still come with our knowledge about how we currently do it. So sometimes one of the hardest things to do is to wipe that knowledge all together and go, if I could do it any way I wanted to do it, how would I do it? As well as also the expectations of the organization, because that plays into it a lot as well. So an organization might have expectations around how you actually do recruitment because that's how we've always done recruitment.
A
So
goal like a gender diversity, or
yes,
there's a
yeah,
mission and vision or a purpose that you
yeah,
want them aligned to. Yeah.
yeah. But I think, look, the ultimate thing is what ATS you're using and the functionality of the ATS and using it to its best capability. The technology that you then plug into it to help you screen your candidates. So we use a tool that's mapped to our capabilities. So that actually ranks or scores all of our candidates for us based on how they respond to Suncorp capabilities. So we don't even touch our applicants until it's gone from. So we'll get the 10,000. We might be able to screen it down to about 3,000 without even touching them, and then we'll do a bit of a shortlist to work out who we're going to video interview. So it's trying to remove where you can automate with reliance on the data that you're getting is how that's how we get through the volume that we do anyway. But then from video interview, then we'll do final interviews after that. So that's sort of where the human comes in. But even then, we're starting to be offered more and more options through AI and things like that
Yeah.
to be able to even view videos for us and all of those sorts of things. So who knows?
And there's a really interesting, like I know there's a lot of conversation around digital disruption and the role of AI in potentially carving chunks of talent acquisition functions out and that kind of thing. Maybe one of
Mm,
the other takeaways for building your aspirational graduate recruiter or talking to
mm,
those that are already in the industry is to sit back and go, yes, blank slate, but where's the highest value that we can
yeah,
provide, right? and
yeah,
and with the emergence of like whether it's AI screening tools or deeper psychometric assessments that plug into organizational skills, competencies, and drivers, that may not be where we play anymore.
yeah,
Where we then
yeah,
play maybe more in deeper partnerships with hiring management, working in that strategic workforce planning
mm,
conversation, really starting to look at the higher value tasks that we couldn't get into before because we were just so bogged down in weight.
yeah. And I think the other thing as well is just the transparency to candidates around your process as well, and why your process is designed the way it is, how the information we gather is used, how they can prepare for your process, all of those sorts of things. Because I think sometimes what we happened a little bit is we all quickly integrated technology and bought new tools and all of these things, but along the way we forgot to actually tell the candidates how we were changing our process, what we were using it for, why we asked them to do what they have
Yeah.
to do as part of their application. I think we forgot that a little bit in there, and I think we've got an opportunity to get back into making sure that the candidates are actually set up for success as well.
Yeah. And I know, Kelly, talking to you in the past, I know this has been a really big focus for Suncorp, is that your candidates can also be your customers. You know, the challenge of retail brands out there is that, you know, different to some other organizations, there's that juxtaposition on, hey, I want a job with you, but I may also be a current or future customer as well. And then needing to link, you know, customer experience with candidate experience at the same time. You know, and I know that, you know, you talked about Suncorp going on that journey a number of years ago and really having to drive that notion as, you know, the program manager to go, well, I still need to treat them as well as what we would if they were a customer, because
it hits the bottom line.
Yeah, if they had a really bad experience, they potentially then say, "Oh, I don't want to."
No, I get that.
I don't want to get my insurance. Through Suncorp.
Yeah. And you reminded me of another good point is just internal communication too. I think that's something that we miss sometimes as well. We get so focused on the external market that we actually forget we need to promote internally. And particularly if you are an organization as well that has an existing potential graduate pool within your employee population already. So which we certainly do. But yeah, that internal comms piece is just as important as the external comms piece.
Well, I think the grad recruitment space is a fascinating space, and I get that it's not for everyone, but I really love what we've discussed here. If I was a recruiter, I'd be really looking into being part of a grad team. It sounds dynamic, strategic, influencing. It sounds like so much more than what, you know, you're an order taker within talent acquisition. It sounds like a really exciting place.
Yeah, very rewarding. Very
and
rewarding,
rewarding
lots
as
of
well.
fun.
Sorry, missed
Lots,
that one.
very rewarding, lots of fun. If you like to actually see the outcome of the work that you do, it's a great place to be in.
Yeah. And then eventually, if you stay in a business long enough, your grads become your hiring managers, and then you get that incredible 360-degree piece where you're like,
well, hopefully not your boss though.
Hey, look, if a grad, that would mean that we have the best recruitment process. Like if I was identifying talent so early that they then became my boss before I became my, like, I mean, probably might be a little bit jaded by that, but like, would that not be the proof of how effective
There's
your
a case
program
study
was?
in that. There's no doubt about that.
Hiring the grad to become your own boss. There's probably a book there or something like that. Yeah.
Very good. Well, Kelly, obviously an absolute pleasure to have you on as a guest, and you were very generous with your time and what you shared, and it is greatly appreciated. So thank you.
Thanks, Kel. It's always good to chat.
I know. Always good to chat, Steve. Thanks, David. Thank you.